Hey, good morning. Good morning. How are you? It's Jack Gately from Jack Gately Real Estate and the online real estate economy. We are looking forward to the CPI number, which should be out in just a few minutes. The headline CPI, we're expected to be at 3.3, and the core CPI, which is X housing, X energy, as if you don't pay for those, is expected to be at 4.1. There is some significant buzz that the core CPI number might be higher because of the way they're factoring in healthcare this year as opposed to how they did it last year. So I don't know if that means they were doing it wrong before, or they're doing it wrong now, or they've been doing it wrong both now and then. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the spin has got to be. But that is going to be the excuse du jour for why headline CPI, why core CPI has not fallen like it should have. Also, clearly, headline CPI should fall because we've had a significant decline in energy over the last month or so. I mean, we're at, as I checked oil this morning, it was about $78 a barrel, where it had been, I think, peaked much closer, maybe even a little bit more than 90 about a month ago. So we're very much looking forward to the CPI number because that could be how we're going to start to look at the 10-year rate, and from that, mortgage rates as a whole. So let's cut to CNBC in just a second, and we're going to bring up mortgage rates and the 10-year as well. Also, your comments from yesterday, I missed those, and I will be reading those on today's show. So let's take a look at CNBC.
Let's get to Rick Santelli standing by with the numbers. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, good morning. Yes, October read on our consumer price index. Month over month headline expected up 1/10 comes in at 0, unchanged 0, which equals the lowest we've seen on this metric since we hit our high at 1.2. That was in June of 22. That was the highest since 05. So 0 ties. That's the lowest we've been. And if you strip out the all-important food and energy, it's up 0.2. That's 1/10 cooler, both in expectations and the rearview mirror. Year over year headline up 3.2%, 1/10 lighter than expectations, 0.5% less than the 3.7 look last time. 3.2, just to put a face on it. 3.0 in June of this year was the lowest since March of 21. So we're still above that level. And finally, what I would consider potentially the most important, even though it's ex food and energy, is year over year CPI, 4%. 1/10 lighter than we were expecting, 1/10 lighter than our last look, which was 4.1. And the metric there, and this is a biggie, we haven't been under 4% since May of 2021. Yes, under 4% since May of 2021, although this is the lowest level since 6.6, which was a high watermark in September of last year. Now, if you look at the markets, interest rates have moved down. We moved from basically 461 in 10s down to its current level at 447, which equals our intraday low test that we had last week. So you want to pay particularly close attention. And the pre-opening Dow futures have moved higher as well, dramatically higher as well.
Dramatically higher. So this is really good news if you're into stocks. And the bond yields are going down. The bond yields were over 4.6 this morning, and now they're down to, for the 10-year, well into the 5 range. So the consensus is on this is that inflation has been tamed. That's going to be the spin out of this today. And let's see. The 10-year now is down below 4.5. It's down to 4.92. Wow. So the consensus will be that it's much less likely that the Fed will raise rates. And now
all of these have moved lower. They haven't really taken out other than that.
Now the consensus is going to be that there will be no further rate hikes, because basically that's what they're saying. See your 10-year now at
is obviously good news.
4.5 on your 10-year. Let me tell Rick Santelli, hold on. Come on, Rick, stop talking there in the background. So this is kind of an amazing report to see inflation And the spin will definitely be inflation has now been tamed. There's consensus then will be rolling out from here that there's no reason to raise rates anymore. And that's definitely what the market wants to see and hear. And as a result, what Rick Santelli was saying was that most of your market is up on this news. A lot of green on the Dow futures, on the S&P futures, NASDAQ, oil down just a touch, and the 10-year way down, 10-year way down. And that affects us in the real estate business, because that means mortgage rates follow the 10-year. And if the 10-year goes down, that means mortgage rates go down, and that's good for your buyers out there and probably also good for your sellers, so that it's not as painful to sell and get that new mortgage. So this is what the spin is today. This is what the spin is today. I was very interested to hear, by the way, yesterday's Mortgage News Daily, mortgage rates closed yesterday at 7.58. Based upon the news that we're getting this morning about inflation being tamed effectively, you're probably going to see that number fall today when it closes out later this afternoon. I would imagine that you'll probably see that fall under 7.5 to close today. Now, whether that holds long term, you know me, I think mortgage rates are going to go back up because of the other major story that's out there, and that is government spending. Government spending. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, the new speaker, was just on CNBC earlier today, and there's a deadline on Friday to pass a new budget. And he is predicting, according to his CNBC interview this morning, that there will be a bipartisan agreement on a two-step government funding plan. So we'll see where that goes. But in the end, whether we have a shutdown this week or not, I really don't think if we have a shutdown, I don't really think that's a bad thing. That means the government's going to spend less money. If that's how we have to get it accomplished, I'm okay with that. But unless we really structurally stop spending so much money, then I think our 10-year yield will go up, unless we turn things around here. UBS is predicting the recession again. So UBS is out today predicting that we will have a recession next year, and that recession will result in Fed rate cuts. Next year. Look at the top headline there on the scroll from CNBC. 10-year Treasury yield tumbles below 4.5 on cool October inflation report. So this report will allow the Fed to take a victory lap based upon how they've beaten down inflation. Okay, I'm really just worried long term about whether or not this is going to be one of those things where we lull, just like we did in the 70s. We had an upturn in inflation, and then it went down. And then we took our eyes off the ball, so to speak, from a policy point of view, and inflation came raging back worse the second time. I'm really worried that we're in that valley of we've been successful, and now there's just too many cheerleaders, and all of a sudden we take our eye off the ball of inflation, and we start spending more, and we cut rates, and then all of a sudden inflation comes roaring back. That's my worry. That's my worry. Like, we're in that valley that we did exist in the 1970s, where we first tamed inflation, and then boom, it came roaring back. I'm kind of worried that we're in that position from that point of view. So UBS out today with a strong case that we're going to have a recession, this much vaulted recession, and that's going to result in Fed cuts next year. I don't know. We're going to see Fed cuts next year, or are they just going to hold steady? Really, what we want to do is massively cut government spending. We're probably not going to see that in an election year. By the way, we do have a comment live on today's show today, so let's go with that comment right now. Relative to the transportation, to the inflation comment, we have a comment from Buyer Shelter and transportation are still 6+. Hopefully a relief in the next few readings. Yeah, so if you dive deeper into the numbers, thank you so much. You're probably going to see some things that are still high. Fortunately, you don't need shelter, right? That's not something you need. That's a luxury we could do without. And transportation, you don't need to get from A to B. Oh, come on, stop that. You don't need that either. So yeah, there are definitely some things that are higher than they need to be. By the way, yesterday I screwed up in the live stream yesterday, and we had some comments and I didn't read them. I didn't see them. My mistake entirely. So I want to bring them up right now. We were talking yesterday about whether millennials were lazy or not. And Rob Lord from Dallas Fort Worth had this comment about under 30 hiring people under 30. Every sub 30 hire I've made in the last year assumes they got their birthday off. Whoopi is right. But regardless, nice homes are for 2 income professionals, 40 plus, and or nepotism babies. And my feeling is that, wow, I don't know if people need a nice home, or if that video that we played yesterday, that woman wasn't necessarily looking for a 4,000 square foot home. I think she was just looking for a modest ranch with maybe a 5-year-old minivan, and not having to, worry about whether or not she can buy chicken this week. And yeah, I mean, we should be having a economy that allows the vast majority of middle class to exist. And it seems that is slipping away from us, especially for our younger people. And that should be the responsibility of us older folks like me. I'm old. David L. said, I talk to many brokers. This is on a different topic altogether. I talk to many brokers every day, and so many are still don't follow or understand what's on the line, their heads in the sand. Well, obviously, David, they should be watching this live stream every morning, of course. And David's talking about the lawsuits that are happening. Thank you very much, David. I think that is true. I did notice on the Tweety Bird yesterday that they had an overflow room for brokers that were attending the NAR conference out in California for whatever. I should probably call it the last NAR conference. It's probably not the last NAR conference. It's just a joke. But they had an overflow room for the briefing that they had on the lawsuits. So now that they've lost, now it appears that a lot of brokers are starting to pay attention. So yeah, there is that. And there's, again, another live look at your 10-year, 4.49. So that means mortgage rates, at least for now, are going to go down. We're going to be following this whole debt ceiling situation as it goes into Friday. We'll see how that goes. I don't know how it's going to go. I think Mike Johnson, the new speaker, is under a lot of pressure to come in with at least a victory, so to speak, and to make Republicans look responsible, and to not be not have a loss in his first major test. I think any leader has that situation. So we'll just keep an eye on it as the days go by. By the way, Rob Lord in Dallas Fort Worth, I forgot to show you that my screensaver for my computer here is a shot of Texas. I loved my visit to Texas. Some of you might remember these characters. That's Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean from the famous movie Giant. I took this photo outside of Marfa, Texas, when I was out there last year. I had the great pleasure of driving west to east in Texas, all the way from like Van Horn, all the way to the Louisiana border. Never took the highway. I was on county roads the whole time and really saw the countryside. It was a great visit. I want to talk about this expectation out of Altos Research from Mike Simonson. Home sales and inventory are starting to show improvements over 2022. So there's been this big debate where, how do I want to say this? Whether the slowdown that we're having this fall is a natural seasonal thing, or is it actually because of sellers and buyers and more inventory, which is going to result in a collapse of housing prices if you listen to the Crash Bros? And when you look at Mike Simonson's report here, there's 567,000 single-family homes in the market, unchanged from last week. Inventory finally peaked for the year. Remember the Altos research rule. If rates go up, inventory will build in 2024. If rates fall, inventory will fall again. Really? If rates fall, inventory will fall? Is that true? Gee, I don't know if that's true. Here in Massachusetts, just kind of a glimpse here in Massachusetts, we've been creeping up on our inventory all year since February, but we are still way below pre-virus levels, and we are still way below last year's number. I think we're about 4,700 homes statewide, and that's about 500 or 600 homes fewer than last year. But inventory is creeping up. I thought it was on its way up because in September we had a 19% increase in the availability of homes on the market. But in October, we only had a 5% increase. So I thought it was happening in September that we were going to have a massive spike in inventory here in Massachusetts, but it was not followed up with the October numbers. So we're still below last year's numbers. Zillow, apparently, I guess if you're Zillow, you could be wrong time and time again. And now they're placing a different bet on next year's housing market, according to Lance Lambert from my favorite new website, Resi Club. Zillow's forecast model predicts that U.S. home prices, as measured by the Zillow index, will fall slightly over the next 12 months. Just 3 months ago, Zillow said they were going to increase by 6.5%. So this obviously goes hand in hand with the inflation number that we just talked about and the UBS call for a recession next year. And that kind of just circles back to the all-important jobs number. And I should probably do a separate video about the jobs market, because when you look into those job numbers that we had the beginning of the month, and you really look at what is how many of those are government jobs and how many of those are healthcare jobs, and many of the healthcare jobs are really low paying jobs, and how much of healthcare is really government spending anyways, when you start to look at how many of the jobs are actually being created that are, how do I want to say this, productive private sector real jobs, that have economic spinoff from them, a multiplier effect from them, because a government job does not have a multiplier effect. Traditionally speaking, it sucks money from the private economy. It's a negative. And when we see the number of government jobs go up, that means that there's sucking resources from the private sector. So when you look at those job numbers, I am worried that the number of productive jobs in the economy is actually already in recession. We'll see how that goes. Let's see. We have some more comments here. Good morning, Sharon says, shelter is hard to find. Yeah, absolutely. Good comment, Sharon. I mean, the number of listings here in Massachusetts, I think Sharon's from the Cape, is at a standstill for sure here in Massachusetts, except for that big run up that we had in September, which was not followed up in October. I have 3 emails here. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about compensation and commission. I have 3 emails here, and these all came in the last 4 or 5 days, and I was kind of shocked by this. And this email and this email, and all 3 of these emails basically ask the same thing. And I think this is a huge question for our industry. And here's the question. All these emails basically ask one way or the other, if you're a member of one MLS, can you guarantee that you're going to get paid if you make an offer on a house that's listed with a different MLS. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that there's probably a whole encyclopedia of rules that say yes. But in a very timely piece, it's like we got like the Vulcan mind meld here going on. Rob Hahn writes this article today or yesterday, and basically he says there's a big difference between having the legal right to get paid versus the ability to enforce that payment. And I think what we're all talking about here is the fact that getting paid through the MLS might go away. These people here that wrote to me, and I'm not going to mention their names because, in fact, several of them, all 2 out of 3 of them begged me not to mention their names. They also were concerned that if they moved from a realtor-owned MLS to, say, a non-realtor-owned MLS, or like what I like to call broker-owned, would they be blackballed? And my answer to question on that is that, of course, a group boycott is patently antitrust violation. And if you ever should experience some type of group boycott like that, you should report that to your local enforcement authority, which here in Massachusetts would be the state attorney general's office. I think the political environment would be highly amenable to a crackdown from the state attorney general's office if you could prove that you were subject to some type of group boycott because you moved to a different type of MLS. So these are serious concerns that these folks raised here. So going forward, how do you make sure you get paid? How do you make sure you get paid? And that's basically the question in this Rob Hahn article. Why buyer agreements are not the solution. So here's my answer in a nutshell. If you want to make sure that you get paid, we have in the past at my agency, we've definitely written things into the contract that, listing agency will pay Jack Gately Real Estate, X amount percent at the close of the transaction. But, the more I think about that, when you put that into the purchase and sale agreement, is the listing agency a party to that purchase and sale agreement? No, they're mentioned in it, but they're not a party to it. Am I a party to that list? No, my buyer is, but not my agency. So I think the best way to go forward on that, in my opinion, would be to have it written into your offer and your subsequent purchase and sale agreement, if you do a 2-step process, which we do here in Massachusetts, that that the seller, who is a party to the agreement, is going to pay the buyer agency, so that you have on record the fact that the seller is going to pay you. But I could change my mind on that pretty darn soon, because it might be the case if we get a strong injunction, as Rob Hahn refers to it, a strong injunction that might actually prohibit the seller from paying the buyer side agency, because that might be coming right down the pipe. You've heard me say this before. But for now, I guess that would be my advice. If it's going to be a situation where the buyer is going to pay the buyer side agency, then there becomes the enforceability of that contract. And I guess part of that goes back to how we used to rent apartments in Boston. So in Boston, very often the tenant would pay the fee. And the very simple way we would get paid if we had to, we had the keys to the apartment on behalf of the landlord, and we would ask for all the money to be available, to be in. All the money's got to be in, and then you can get your keys. But if there's no fee here, you're not going to get your key. I don't know if you could pull that off with a sale, but that's definitely how we pulled it off with a rental. The money's not here. You're going to lose your apartment. Sorry. I don't know if you have that type of leverage with a sale, but that's how that's how we did it with that. Let's see, the next topic I want to talk about. Yeah, let's go to this one here. Over at NAR, Andrea B. from Inman News reports that NAR General Counsel is swearing up and down that we have a, quote, a very strong basis for a complete reversal of the jury's verdict, as well as the damages awarded, story forthcoming. So this was from yesterday afternoon. Nonetheless, they are talking a really good game out in California that they are absolutely positively going to appeal. Very quickly, relative to where it is here, 1000 Watt, you know how I'm a big fan of 1000 Watt in their blog and their weekly email, which I strongly recommend that you would sign up for. They're foreseeing a world where keeping listings in-house is much more common than it is here. We all know that Compass has done everything possible to keep both sides of the deal in-house, to do basically dual agency or to do designated agency in-house, to get both sides of the deal. So going on what I've said before, focus on sellers. Getting listings is going to be more important than ever before. And the percentage of agencies that keep those listings, those who have listings are going to hoard them. I think that's the most important part of this 1000 Watt email. Getting listings and hoarding them. In other words, taking them off the IDX or doing them somehow in-house with whatever rules that are applicable at the time. I think that is definitely a trend, and it's going to help the bigger agencies. That's going to help the bigger agencies if you can only get houses because the bigger agency has it, right? They themselves will be the market makers rather than the portals. That's an interesting way to think about it. All right. Lastly today, we have one of the absolute worst takes on the housing crisis come out of the Boston Globe. I know you're shocked that the Boston Globe would have a bad take on the housing crisis. And since I would never pay for the Boston Globe, and haven't for a really long time, we can only read the headline and the one sentence paragraph. This is from yesterday. How living longer is worsening the housing shortage. We're living longer and making the housing shortage worse. Many people are staying in their homes years beyond what they would have a generation ago. So according to the Boston Globe, Grandma, you gotta die. Basically, they're saying, Grandma, you're living too long and you're making the housing crisis die already. You're making the housing crisis worse. Die already, please. This is from, I think his name is Larry Elderman. He's a columnist over there at the Globe. This is disgusting. And one of the absolute worst takes I've ever seen on the housing crisis. Now, statistically, is there some truth to that? Yeah, but how can you blame people for living a long life? And did we not kind of already figure this out, that as medicine progresses, people are going to live long? This is not a big surprise. This just didn't happen out of the blue sky. But classic Boston Globe spin. The housing crisis is caused by people who are living longer. It has nothing to do with the Fed and how they screwed up our economy by lowering interest rates to zero, subsidizing all sorts of bad malinvestments. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with horrific zoning. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has the fact that people are living too long. Okay. All right. By the way, Thursday, we may or may not have a show. I don't know. It's a busy day. I'll keep you posted. Until then, have a great day. Go make some money. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, we did have one comment here. Great video. Thank you, Sharon. I completely agree that listing keeps listings in-house. That is a problem for the MLS system. Yes, thank you, David. It is. I think that requires a little bit deeper dive in the future, and I think we will do a little bit deeper dive in the future on that one. Thank you. Great point, David. Thanks.